What is up, everybody? It's your boy, the champ, Z Money, coming in a little late, but we're still getting it with the latest edition of your favorite series, Zachetology. We got the 21-44 first round coming at us. I won't lie, been a bit of a sedate year. Not just for me, obviously, after you win the championship, I think you just cool off for a little bit, but maybe for the league as a whole. But that's not necessarily bad. It's, we're cruising. I think even though we're dropping GMs left and right, we'll find new people, things will continue, and hopefully we can have some fun in the playoffs. And so on that note, let's talk a little bit about the playoffs. A high-level view, I'll just say it now because it's obvious. It would take a pretty impressive act of God, I should say, to get us a finals matchup that is not the Jazz versus the Nets. They both seem quite good. The Nets are almost a lock. I would bet my house today on this Nets squad. I love them. We'll talk more about them maybe in the future Zachetologies. This one, there's not a ton to talk about. But the Jazz statistically look more dominant than the rest of their conference compared to the Nets, where the Hawks look good. But I do have more belief in the other teams in the West against the Jazz, at least to come up with an upset. But these teams are the heavy favorites. The East is pathetic. The West is at least trying. I respect the West. The Pelicans were 42-40 as the 8th seed. I respect that. I actually think the East had a better 8th seed in terms of record, but the Knicks are just, the fact that the Knicks got the 7th seed is just a testament to how pathetic this conference is. So I'm hoping we'll see the East come back to resembling some form of real basketball. In the West, it's just going to be really saucy in the West. I don't really see, all these teams are good. They're young. West is going to be a party for a lot of years. It's going to be a banger. All right, let's get into the matchups. We'll start from the bottom. We got the number 1 seeded Nets versus the number 8 seeded Heat. The Nets are going to win this 4-0, so I guess we'll just kick it off by writing that on the books. The thing to talk about here is I like what Idwin has done with the team. I think he didn't, I wouldn't say everything he did is perfect in my mind, but I would give him a rock solid, A minus maybe. The only thing I think compared to his squad last season is if you look at the net pure talent level of his team, it's gone down. But I think he got bailed out by this Wendell Moore plus TC. So, I guess in his offseason moves, I think the talent level went down. I love getting Ted Guillen. That's a fantastic play. He's a perfect fit. However, the rest of the teardown, Idwin got saved by getting Wendell Moore on a min contract, which I should have gotten. I fucking gave him a min and I beat him in the finals. Why didn't I get Wendell Moore? But then getting that plus TC, that's been one of the most important pieces to Idwin's squad, because Wendell Moore is basically his bench microwave guy. But without that, I just think Idwin cost his talent level a little too much compared to what he had last season. However, it's a lot more of a defense-focused squad. There's a lot less scoring to be shared. So, the benefit of that is that you can give Ted Guillen, who would normally not score very much, his scoring's up 30% this season, and his efficiency is unbelievable. Olin's scoring the ball more. He's up 3 points per game, and his efficiency is obviously always going to be great. So this team is a better defensively oriented squad that will work well around Olin. For the Heat, it's just been really impressively unfortunate for Alex. It's fun to rag on him for his poor choices, but this time it was more just awful luck. I mean, one of his problems, he shouldn't be the 8th seed. There's 2 reasons he's the 8th seed. It's the broken leg to Tekashi, and somewhere Jake is saying, I fucking told you all, because the only cope that Jake had for that awful giving Tekashi to Alex was, he was it's because Tekashi gets injured too much. And while even if a guy gets injured, the chance of a guy breaking a leg is so low that I don't think, even the fact that Tekashi broke the leg, I don't think is a viable reason to justify the trade. Jake will be able to cope and say that he knew all along. So it sucks for Alex that happened. It also sucks that he's incompetent and couldn't get his cap under, so he had to have American benched. And he also just then generally had shit luck with his wins and losses, which is why he's the 8th seed. Alex wasn't going to win the chip. Could Alex have been a 4, 5, 6 seed if things panned out a little differently? Absolutely. The downside of the 8th seed is you just get washed by the Nets, who's going to wash everybody. And it's more fun to get to watch 2 playoff streams where you're involved as opposed to 1. But the Nets will move on. Next, we have the Pacers versus the Wizards. This Wiz team is the exact same fucking team as last season. So that obviously means I do not love their chances. They did make the Eastern Conference Finals, but making the Eastern Conference Finals involves maybe beating one team and then avoiding the Nets. So I don't know. It's not the highest honor in my opinion. Timmy's a little older. Chuck's a little older. I still like Suttles, but he's more of like a great 3rd, 4th, 5th piece, and he's not a team he does not make or some nerdy shit like that. The Pacers have come out of nowhere with a little, Sonics-inspired squad. They're shooting the 3-ball pretty well. They're over 40% as a team with Shane Sullivan, Joe Sandberg, and whoever that small forward that shoots threes is, who's not bad. Richard Pollard, he's the one. He's scoring a shitload of points with a crap load of threes. This Pacers squad is interesting. They're a little heavy on the offense and a little light on the defense, in my opinion. So I think they're the 5th offense and the 10th defense. But they're a good overall squad, and I think they're going to beat the Wizards. This is like a complete team. Again, they kind of have shades of the winning Sonics last season, just like a little bit of a lower talent level. In terms of the specific matchup against the Wiz, the big question will be Percy against Suttles. Percy is like a big-time scorer, 27 points per game. Suttles is one of my favorite 4-spot defenders. So that could be, in my opinion, how Brian wins. I think, if Timmy Hamilton can play D, it just sucks because it's like Shane Sullivan, it almost feels like a waste to use Timmy Hamilton on. Although he could do a good job. Timmy Hamilton is bigger. He's just as athletic. But it's like you're putting your guy on one of these meme 3 shooters. Like Joe Sandberg is, in my opinion, basically just like undefendable. The upside of Sandberg is his volume is never crazy. So it's like, I guess you put Chuck on Sandberg and then you put Timmy on Shane Sullivan. But I just think the Wizards, they're just the worst team in my opinion. I like this Pacers squad a lot. I'll probably have them they're going to get Nets next round, unfortunately. It'll be fun to see how Sandberg does against the Nets in a subsequent season. This should be a close one, but maybe not as close as a 4-5 might imply. I'm feeling the Pacers pretty solid on this by way of 3-point shooting and also by way of just me never really liking this Wizards offense, especially with Timmy Hamilton, another year older. It's just like Timmy's peaked. It's that simple. The man is 34. He was at 56% true shooting this season. That's just not particularly efficient. The 3-point is not at A+. It may never come back. Could be tough. So I think the Pacers move on. Welcome to contention, Kyle. I don't know if I would call you in contention just because of the existence of the Nets, but like plus 12.6, that's solid. Next, we have the 2-seeded Hawks versus the 7-seeded Knicks. So the Knicks are awful. They're one of the worst teams I've ever seen make a 7-seed. What's crazy? The crazy thing about the Knicks is not about this season, but it's next season. The Knicks are almost certainly going to be worse because they just have they only have old players, a bunch of terrible contracts. Don Scott's a bad contract. Ira Dean's an atrocious contract at 32. Renee Snyder, he's cheaper, but still at 32, not a great contract. They have no assets to acquire anybody with. So their team's going to be so bad, and yet it'll be interesting to see how many games they can win because there's an argument to be made that outside of the 7 teams that will be above the Knicks, which is everybody, and then the Heat, because the Heat are better. They're just some shenanigans. Everybody else will be hard tanking, but I could honestly see a world where the Knicks are as bad as a soft tank. So this team is going to get 4-0. Could they get a single game because Renee Snyder drops 40 and hits 100% of his threes? They could, but I highly doubt it will happen. And the Hawks are a solid squad. Hawks won a lot of games. So the big question for the Hawks is I don't know. I've never liked this Hawks team. I don't think they have a bunch of playoff risers. They have a bunch of rock-solid players, and then the obvious big new addition of Granny. The big question when it comes to Granny is, will he hold up well in the playoffs? It feels like when Granny was a Celtic, it was always these close but not quites in the playoffs. And that's kind of the player I feel about when it comes to Granny. It's like, yes, he's an efficient scorer. Yes, he can play with good volume. He plays solid defense. He gets boards. He does it all well. But it's just like he's never breaking the game, you know? I just feel like I'm never seeing Granny go for like 45 or doing some crazy shit or getting like 15 rebounds and 7 offensive boards. Like the type of stuff that I feel like a lot of squads do well. And then as a whole team, a lot of these teamy guys, I just don't love if you're going for like if the Hawks' idea is more to be like the spread it around 5-man ball of like the Sonic style. Like Marty Taylor, I just hate. Marty Taylor scores too much, or he tries to score too much, but he's not a very good scorer. His defense is just it's like I get why you play Marty Taylor, but I don't think he's a playoff riser. Jason Jackson is fine. I'm okay with Jason Jackson. I do not like Jamel Abraham. I think he's just never efficient, never going to be efficient. And then Keegan Murray is kind of the same thing as Jamel Abraham. It's like, I get that he has some size and he's kind of interesting defensively in the boards, but I really don't like the offense and he scores the ball too much. I think the Hawks offense in later rounds is going to be what will kill them. I think they're a good pub stomp team where guys like Keegan Murray and Jamel Abraham and shit, even like a Jason Jackson or a Granny can look really good. But when it comes to the time to play a real defense, I think a lot of those guys are more likely to melt when faced with a good matchup. But no drama for the Hawks. They get round 2. Next, we have the Hornets versus the Sixers. This is also, I think this will probably be the series of the first round for the East. The Pacers-Wizards is also definitely interesting, although I like the Pacers pretty solidly. The Sixers have just like I don't know, fun isn't even the word. They just have a squad. It's offense primarily. Skeeter Jones and Ariagato as guards, scoring. Gomez in the front court, and then kind of like assist shout-outs to both Paolo and Traxler as like guys who can play, but like maybe aren't quite efficient enough to really be like the big scoring types. The same thing I guess could be said about Morris, although I would argue Morris is the type of guy I'd be looking to completely cut out of my lineup if I'm Jack, and I would probably be playing Jamie Jones and like Chaconis. So I don't know. The Sixers, the whole problem is going to be that like a bunch of these guys are borderline scorers in my opinion. Ariagato, I always worry about. Is Aria good in the playoffs? The defense combo is just really bad. Paolo is really losing his offensive luster, and he's got nothing to offer on defense. So like again, quite scary. Traxler is just like the complete lack of athleticism is also again scary, and he's a bit foul-y. So those are my concerns for the Sixers. The Hornets on the other side, I didn't expect the Hornets to win 60 games, although it's always hard to like gauge how good these Eastern teams are because I feel like you should shave 5 wins off every single one of them and probably cut like 3 to 5 points off all of their margins to better represent them. But a lot of guys I just didn't really expect to do quite as well as they did well. Anthony Saucedo, who I just don't like, actually had a great season, just 60% true shooting, 20 points per game, almost a 2.0 assist to turnover ratio, like big, playing some perimeter D. I just never thought his 3-ball would ever really get there, but his 3-ball has gotten there. And he takes more inside shots than jumpers. Crazy. Granted, he's about to get old, but still put together a great season. Sunday Eka, I thought, would get immediately cold by TC. It looks like he's going to give a one good season this season before he's cold by TC. And then Carmichael Brown is, again, surviving TC is better than I expected. He did get moved to a bench role, so his stats look a little inflated by that, I think. But, like, hey, he's a dude who can give you a rock-solid 30 minutes. He just got to start off the bench. And I think... Wow, I just read that Zach is also leaving the league. They're dropping like flies. If I continue the Zachetology and I upload it to YouTube, will there be anybody left? I don't know. Well, bye, Zach. I wish you'd made the playoffs so I could have given a reason to talk about you, but your team sucks. So peace. Back to the Hornets. Yeah, this Hornets team is solid. Oh, and Samuel Butts. Like, he's scoring almost 30 points per game. Like, he's a meme player. He doesn't do anything except go inside. I think he's bad at everything else. I guess he gets defensive boards, but that's a pretty easy thing to get from other sources. So I don't love the Hornets. I don't love the Sixers. But at the end of the day, I think the Hornets, have better, more consistent offense. I think there's nobody who can guard Butts. It's going to be Gomez, but it's like, can Gomez defend Butts? I don't know. And you have to get the matchup. And then also these kind of like the end-to-end scoring. Like, even though Butts is probably my favorite guy to go off, it's like there's a second good big in Carmichael Brown that's going to be playing minutes for the Hornets, and there is not a second good big for the Sixers. I should say I don't like Traxler because he's just so unathletic. I hate F- centers. I don't care if you have a dude who's 7'7" and he's got A's on every rating. If his quickness is F-, he's always going to be sketchy. So I find I don't love Traxler. So I think that's going to be the big men will be the edge. I like the big men of the Hornets over the big men of the Sixers. The Sixers guards have a shot. It'll be Skeeter Jones and Ariagato going off. That would be the reason the Sixers win. But the Hornets have a pretty good defensive lineup to run against them. Like I said, Anthony Salcedo is a fine defender. He's not great by any stretch, but he's big and he's athletic. Sunday Eka, a little lacking in athleticism, but big and a very good defender. So I think this one will be a slim margin for the Hornets. They also have home court, of course. So I'm going to pick them 7 games against the Sixers to take it and go to round 2 to face the Hawks. All right, let's go out east. Let's go out west. Clippers versus Mavericks. So the Clippers are going to win this. The Mavericks, I think, look, you look at the Mavericks and you go 42-40, a 0 margin. And you go wow, that team's ass. And while they are certainly not the best 7 seed we've ever seen, I don't hate them. I just think the West was actually quite competitive. And so it tanked everybody's margins. So there's a few bright spots on this Mavericks squad. Walker Kessler and Ludmila Pavlyuchenko are the 2 guys. But it falls apart pretty quickly when you go beyond that. Victor Bart, although he gets a lot of blocks, is lacking in athleticism and has foul problems and doesn't really do anything else well. His scoring is and his rebounding is okay, but the D post D rating is just pretty brutal, and the fact that he's making $24 million does not add up great. D'Angelo Dish is okay, fine, he's a point guard, and then Antonio Sotomayor, another guy who I just don't love. He's kind of a pretty meh, he's a small forward who can pass and rebound, but he doesn't play the defense, which is the key thing a small forward needs to be able to do, or be able to score the ball. So the Mavs are a fun squad, but nothing super good. I don't know if we have a new GM for the Mavs. I forget who came in, if he's taking the Mavs, but if I'm him, you just got to move Kessler and Ludmila and then press the hard reset button. But I just hope he doesn't trade him to some shark-ass deal. Doc or whoever, don't let him do that. The Clippers overachieved with the team, in my opinion. There are some shocking stat lines that I just didn't expect coming out of this team. I think Emmett Joyce did better than I expected. I know he only scored 55% true shooting, but that he had to make 48% jump shots to get there. So I did not expect him to ever be able to do that. Francois Santoro, okay, he really had a bad end of the season. I remember looking at him a couple sims ago and he was closer to 56, 57 true shooting. He's at 53. That kind of ended how I expected. Mike Mortar, I expected to be good the whole time, and he's been good. He's just, young and is will he fill out that inside rating and stuff? Will he become a high efficiency guy? But there's just good fits in every position for this team. They're just not great. Broderick Lewis, a great small forward. Great's a bit strong. A very good small forward. Jesus Veloso and Gustavo Estes is the other big men. Again, rock solid. They're not all around. Veloso is a defense only guy, and Estes is he scores all right, but he's got foul problems and no rebounding. But I think no rebounding is a bit strong. He's just not specialist. It's a good team. I just think there are other teams in the playoffs. I would probably, of the top 4 teams, obviously I'd take the Jazz number 1. I still think if it came down to a head-to-head matchup, I would still probably take the Rockets and the Clippers, or the Rockets and the Sonics over the Clippers, because the whole problem with this team is the offense I expect to disappear. Where is the offense going to come from in the playoffs? It's probably coming from Emmett Joyce in terms of a volume perspective, and I don't love the way Emmett Joyce's shot chart looks at all. And then it's okay, well, if it's coming from Mike Mortar, I have at least a little faith in the efficiency of it. But it's Mike Mortar is not getting a lot of minutes on this team. I think I would give more minutes to Mike Mortar if I am the Clippers. And against the Mavs, it's actually a pretty safe opportunity to do so because you get such a cakewalk matchup to see how he does. And maybe not start Gustavo Estes, or at least give the minutes to Mortar, because Estes is always going to be scary because of the fouls, and I think Mortar is less of a fouler if I'm not mistaken, although I might be wrong because I haven't looked specifically at the foul ratings. In any case, the Clippers are going to walk through this one. I'll give one to the Mavs because I don't think the Clips are super strong for the playoffs, but this should be gentleman's sweep. Next, we have the Rockets Suns. So the Rockets, in classic Bryant fashion, churned a good amount of their team. Shane Sullivan is gone. In his place is Sophie Roach and Z Money. Carmichael Brown is gone. In his place is Will Four. I like the front court of the Rockets a lot. Will Four, West Eastwood, and Cantor Bakwa is great. Cantor Bakwa, one of my favorite young defensive bigs. You need offense to build around him, but what he gives on defense is so sick that it's hard to not like him. Wes Eastwood is definitely showing signs of aging, but again, still offers a pretty good all-around package. He does rebounding. He does the posty. He has some fun with the steals and the passing. And his scoring, while is not what it once was, I finally accepted it's over. It's still not awful. Then the guards, like I mentioned, they're just not great. Look, Sophie Roach, I don't care how efficient Sophie Roach looks on a given season. You just won't convince me that Sophie Roach is good. Sophie Roach doesn't have the A+ on the 3-ball and is 6 feet tall. There's nothing more to talk about here. Could they be a quality defender? Could Sophie be a quality defender? Sure. The passing is not good enough for me to love Sophie as like a point guard, low usage, but that's all on the premise that there's some low in the usage, but there's not going to be. Sophie's going to be a huge usage person who I think will be a liability to melt in the playoffs, especially against any of these good guards. And there's a lot of good guards that they're going to play in the West. The other offensive points of note on this team are like Omer Rosenberg, kind of just like throw him at the hoop and see what happens type of dude. And that's really it. I also don't love this Rockets squad. To be honest, when I get to the Sonics, I'll talk about them, but it felt like the Sonics should have probably cleaned up the 2 seed pretty easily. Because I don't like the Rockets or the Clippers, even though they both finished a couple games above the Sonics. That being said, the Rockets don't have to play the Sonics or the Clippers. They have to play the Suns, and the Suns are not the worst team. Excuse me, a lot of smoke in the air over here. But they are a bit of a mess. Look, it was cool that Carlitos Felipe, I think he plus DC'd. He's not purple right now, but I think we're all in agreement he plus DC'd. He's an interesting player. He's just not the guy who's going to carry a team. I think he doesn't quite score efficiently enough. And a lot of his value is in the fact that he's giant and can pass and can play defense between like 1 through 4. Unless that like you can throw him at any squad and get 30 points per game. So the Suns need offense to go around him, and they just don't have it. Like William Caban is kind of like the other scory guy, and William Caban is just not like super efficient scorer. He's fine as like a team that doesn't care because he gets you 57-58% true shooting. But the rest of this team is just like pieces that don't quite fit great. I like Hironobu Sakaguchi a lot, but because of his fouling problems, you just need to have he's more of like the keystone for a bridge that's already been built rather than the bridge itself. And the Suns are lacking that bridge. I feel that way kind of about like Felipe and Hironobu Sakaguchi. And the bridge built around them is just not great. Seth Lee is like just past his prime. Is he even going to be able to play in the playoffs? Okay, no, only 3 days, so he'll be playing. So yeah, I guess this Suns team's a bit messy. I don't love it. I think Jason is just waiting for one more round of TCs to see if there's a chance that Carlitos becomes the dude. And if that doesn't happen, then we might see things change. I don't know if Carlitos is going to get. I don't know what the extension status is for him too, but like. At 8 mil, it's one thing, or even at 14 mil, it's one thing to have all of this value. But at 20 mil, you just look at the offense, and it can be a little dicey. I don't know. I think it'll get a little better, but still. All of that is to say, in terms of matchups, the Rockets are going to win this. The Suns' front court is just duty, and the Rockets' front court is very good. And I think the Rockets still have that specialist Harlan Davis, right? Yeah, they have Harlan Davis and Z Money. I would just probably bench Sophie Roach in round 1. and just play Harlan Davis and Z Money a shitload, knowing that Carlitos Felipe is going to get a bunch of looks for this team, and Seth Lee too, for that matter, and just assume those guys will play good enough defense while your front court feasts. That should be a pretty simple wrap up on, I'll say, a 4-1 series as well. It's unfortunate. The Suns kind of took a step back from being one of my favorite young squads to, I don't know, they kind of feel stuck in no man's land again, unfortunately. All right, next we have the Sonics versus the Thunder. I don't think this is going to be a super close series, unfortunately. Famous last words when you say that about your own team in a 4-5. But I think the Thunder, it sucks because the Thunder are a really interesting, fun, young team. They kind of are the new Suns. But the Sonics, I think, might have sandbagged the regular season. We'll see if that holds true, but I'm just suspicious that that's the case. So we'll talk about the Thunder first. Look, the Thunder have a fun, young front court. They have Angel Moore as like the vet who's giving them value for the next 2 seasons. Totally good for that value. Like, he's useful, although he's not perfect. I think if you look at his percents this season, it's the inside percent was not great, and it's a little scary. And the only reason Angel Moore looked great this season, or good, is because he hit a lot of jump shots. And I'll just hate on so many players for this. I just don't think that jump shots are like a great litmus test of how good you are. The lowest inside percentage of basically his career, at least since he started getting real minutes, scares me a lot, especially when we're talking about an athleticism-based 31-year-old. So I worry about him melting in the playoffs, but I like Jalen Duren and Milan Garrett. I don't know their contract statuses, but they're both fine players that like are young enough to still have a chance to pop. So if you're holding on to them and the money works, it's like they're good. They both have room to grow. I think Jalen Duren as a high volume scorer, the question is, can you get him above that 10 points per game? I like the rest of what he does in the athletic package he's in. He could be useful if he can get to 17 plus points per game. And then for Milan Garrett, it's just like, it's tough as a center who doesn't get blocks or rebounds to be useful, again, unless you're doing some crazy scoring. So I think Milan will maybe he just needs some growth. If he could hit a plus TC, I think he could become super interesting. But it's a great suite of guys to have in your front court. The big sad thing that happened to the Thunder was the death of Morris. So much potential after that rookie season. And I know the efficiency is up, but the defense is just so bad now. And there's just nothing except scoring. And I get that he's a 6'8" mega athlete, and that's the reason he can still score 16 efficient points a game. But he reminds me a lot of Benedict Mathurin, where it's like, fuck, Benedict could have been good. And it's like you see Benedict after a minus TC, and he's putting up similar stats to Morris, where it's like you see the potential, and you're like, damn, if he was a TC up, like just the original player, could have scored a lot of good points. Liam McTalk, super interesting, just young. So, that's going to be the thing about this Thunder squad is, I like the pieces, but they're just all a little young. Meanwhile, the Sonics are more of a in their prime team. So the Sonics obviously had the unstoppable team last year. The thing about the Sonics and why I think I say they're sandbagging is the only change that I really made to the squad was moving Joe Sandberg and plugging in Michael Lewis. And look, I'm not saying Michael Lewis is as good as Joe Sandberg because he's not, but Michael Lewis did a pretty admirable job filling in. He's got some room to fill out on offense, I hope, in the inside and jump shot. And with the A+ 3-point, it's one of those things where if you go look at when Michael Lewis was drafted, where he was like a red-yellow or an orange-yellow, and he had the A 3-point pot, it's kind of one of those you just keep going until you see where it hits the max. And he already had a fantastic 3 shooting season. He just needs to get the inside shot chart and the jump shot percentage figured out. But there's a lot of good potential for him as the next big 3-and-D guy for the Sonics. But the rest of this team is just amazing. I mean, Ney, Seth Charles, Wilt, Augusto, Alexander Sierski, Jason Treble, all these guys that looked awesome in the playoffs last season. It's the same squad. And I know Joe Sandberg snuck out with playoff MVP last season, but I think he only scored 18 points per game. So Joe Sandberg was very much a part of the team. And I say all that to be I don't see why replacing Michael Lewis would make the Sonics drop by a ton. Now, what I think happened is I made a big playoff lineup change last season to try and win in the playoffs, which worked really well, which was giving Gerard McWhorter a bunch of minutes. And And I think Gerard McWhorter is great in the playoffs. And while I haven't settled on my lineup plan, I very well may play him against the Thunder. But I think Gerard McWhorter is a terrible pub stomp player because he is not a good scorer. And I could instead be giving those minutes to Augusto Salistano, who could just be like meme chucking an additional 2 or 3 threes a game, which is just like a higher efficiency play. So again, I think that might have caused me to sandbag a little bit. I think this could have been a 60-win team, should have been a 60-win team. In terms of the specific matchups against the Mavericks, these are two of the better front courts in the West. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I do think, like, the Sonics have it all in the front court. Seth Charles and Wilt Nichols are just two of the best big men in the league right now, in my opinion. Seth Charles is a little short on the efficiency, but he doesn't foul. He's got the athleticism. He's got the size. He gets boards. Like, he does the high volume. So I really like Seth. And then Wilt, obviously, although he had a down year, the down year was another game plan thing where it was like the shot chart was not good. The percents were almost the exact same, if down ever so slightly, but he just turned 30, so it's not really an age-related thing in my opinion quite yet. So, I think the front court of the Sonics should be ahead a little bit. And then in terms of the guards, they're just better. Look, the Sonics team went from like the best three-point shooting team of all time to this was still like a top 10 three-point shooting team of all time. 44%, low 44.2%, I think, which is insane. So I think the Sonics still have that Sonic sauce. Whether it's enough to overcome the Jazz, we can talk about tomorrow if the Sonics do win. But I think this will pan out in favor of the Sonics, probably 4-2. I think this is a big game plan check for me, where it's like, I shouldn't fuck this up. The team is better. The Thunder are fun. It would be cool to see. I'll give the Thunder 2, because I do like the Thunder. I could see Liam McTowell getting some lockdown minutes on whoever it is, Siersky, Lewis, Salustiano. And I could see the front court having some legitimately good games. But I just think the barrage of like inside efficiency plus threes, I don't know if the Thunder have the guys to stop it quite yet. So, yeah, I'm picking the Sonics. Finally, Jazz Pelicans. The Jazz will cruise to a 4-0 win on this one. Not a lot to talk about. Look, the Jazz are great. I'll talk about them more in the next one. The Pelicans suck. Did they deserve to make the playoffs? Probably not. I honestly think the Grizzlies probably should have made it, could have made it, would have made it. Honestly, the thing that I like about the West, you could make an argument that the T-Wolves, the Grizzlies, the Warriors, the Lakers all deserved that 8th seed more than the Pelicans. The Pelicans got it, and I just don't like their team. Like, Francis Threadgill is okay, but he's got foul problems. Antonino is fun, so it's a shame he's kind of stuck in a dead zone. I do think, he's already 28. It creeps up on you. It's like, will Antonino ever find the team that can maximize his utility? I don't know if we'll ever see that. I hope we do. But yeah, the Jazz are great, and that they were good last season, and then they added Chance Roman, who, while I know it's scary to own Chance Roman because of the fouls and the athleticism reliance, like, he's only 29 this season, so the athleticism's still there, and I consider him like a top 10, top 15 type player. I think he carried the Clippers all by himself last playoffs, and you added that to a team that was like plus 10 already, and that's how you get here. So the Jazz will cruise. Jazz Sonics, if we get it, I think is the big saucy West matchup. I think those are the two best teams in the West. But these are my predictions. I hope we get a good sim. I will be honest, this is not the best round one I've ever seen. I don't think there's a ton of close matchups. It's times when I say shit like this where we get some out of the blue upset, but I'm just not seeing it right here. I feel pretty confident about all these picks. This is one of those times where I feel like I could sweep the board pretty well. But alas, these are my predictions. I hope we have an enjoyable time. GMs, don't quit, please. Zach, find someone to replace you. We'll miss you. But yeah, stay breezy. Toodles.